Today we are going to start reading chapter 17, but first I want to review. I want you to look back at the end of chapter 16. Who was it that Milo and his friends meet in the Mountains of Ignorance? They meet two particular people. First, they meet a dirty bird named the ever-present Word Snatcher, and he tells Milo he's a nuisance, not a demon. And then at the end, the very end, we meet a nice-looking gentleman without a face, who he later reveals himself as a demon, the terrible Trivium. So today we are going to learn more about that character, but first I want you to pay close attention to this word trivial. It is the part of the word trivium, and it means not valuable or important and insignificant. Some synonyms or examples are unimportant, insignificant, petty, minute, small. They are details or things that seem insignificant. So pay close attention to the wordplay of this character as we read the beginning of chapter 17. Chapter 17, The Unwelcoming Committee. The humbug whistled gaily at his work, for he was never as happy as when he had a job which required no thinking at all. After what seemed like days, he had dug a hole scarcely large enough for his thumb. Tock shuffled steadily back and forth with the dropper in his teeth, but the full well was still almost as full as when he began, and Milo's new pile of sand was hardly a pile at all. "How very strange," said Milo, without stopping for a moment. "I've been working steadily all this time, and I don't feel the slightest bit tired or hungry. I could go right on the same way forever." "Perhaps you will," the man agreed with a yawn. At least it sounded like a yawn. "Well, I wish I knew how long it was going to take," Milo whispered as the dog went by again. "Why not use the magic staff and find out?" replied Tock as clearly as anyone could, with an eyedropper in his mouth. Milo took the shiny pencil from his pocket and quickly calculated that at the rate they were working, it would take each of them 837 years to finish. "Pardon me," he said, tugging at the man's sleeve and holding the sheet of figures up for him to see, "but it's going to take 837 years to do these jobs." "Is that so?" replied the man, without even turning around. "Well, you'd better get on with it, then." "But it hardly seems worthwhile," said Milo softly. "Worthwhile!" the man roared indignantly. "All I meant was perhaps it wasn't too important," Milo repeated, trying not to be impolite. "Of course it's not important," he snarled angrily. "I wouldn't have asked you to do it if I thought it was important." And now, as he turned to face them, he didn't seem quite so pleasant. "Then why bother?" asked Tock, whose alarm suddenly began to ring. "Because, my young friends," he muttered sourly, "what could be more important than doing unimportant things? If you stop to do enough of them, you'll never get to where you're going." He punctuated his last remark with a villainous laugh. "Then you must," gasped Milo. "Quite correct," he shrieked triumphantly. "I am the terrible Trivium, demon of petty tasks and worthless jobs, ogre of wasted effort, and monster of habit." The humbug dropped his needle and stared in disbelief while Milo and Tock began to back away slowly. "Don't try to leave," he ordered with a menacing sweep of his arms, "for there's so very much to do, and you still have over 800 years to go on the first job." "But why do only unimportant things?" asked Milo, who suddenly remembered how much time he spent each day doing them. "Think of all the trouble it saves," the man explained, and his face looked as if he'd be grinning an evil grin, if he could grin at all. "If you only do the easy and useless jobs, you'll never have to worry about the important ones, which are so difficult. You just won't have the time, for there's always something to do to keep you from what you really should be doing, and if it weren't for that dreadful magic staff, you'd never know how much time you were wasting." As he spoke, he tiptoed slowly toward them with his arms outstretched, And he continued to whisper in a soft, deceitful voice, "Now do come and stay with me. We'll have so much fun together. There are things to fill and things to empty, things to take away and things to bring back, things to pick up and things to put down. And besides all that, we have pencils to sharpen, holes to dig, nails to straighten, stamps to lick, and ever so much more. Why, if you stay here, you'll never have to think again. And with a little practice, you can become a monster of habit too." They were all transfixed by the Trivium's soothing voice, but just as he was about to clutch them in his well-manicured fingers, a voice cried out, "Run! Run!" Milo, who thought it was Talk, turned suddenly and dashed up the trail. "Run! Run!" it shouted again, and this time Talk thought it was Milo and quickly followed him. "Run! Run!" it urged once more, and now the humbug, not caring who said it, ran desperately after his two friends, with the terrible Trivium close behind. This way, the voice called again. They turned in its direction and scrambled up the difficult, slippery rock, sliding back at each step, almost as far as they'd gone forward. With a great effort and many helping paws from Talk, they reached the top of the ridge at last, but only 2 steps ahead of the ferocious Trivium. Over here, advised the voice, and without a moment's hesitation, they started through a puddle of sticky ooze, which quickly became ankle-deep, then knee-deep, then hip-deep, until finally they were struggling along through what felt very much like a waist-deep pool of peanut butter. The Trivium, who had discovered a mound of pebbles which needed counting, followed no more, but stood at the edge, shaking his fist, shouting horrible threats, and promising to rouse every demon in the mountains. For the next part of our lesson, we are going to be working up at the top of chapter 17, chapter notes, where it says the demon's name and its meaning. So go ahead and scroll up to the top so you can work along with me. We are going to fill out each part of this chart. Now remember, we discussed the wordplay with his name. Trivial means insignificant things that seem to be a waste of time. And it's a play on words because that's exactly what he does, is he encourages Milo, Talk, and Humbug to do things that waste time. Now let's look at the appearance box. It says, what does this demon look like? We are going to capture 3 details about his appearance and add them to the box at the top. This is where we learned what he looked like, so please listen and add into the box as I read. He was beautifully dressed in a dark suit with a well-pressed shirt and tie. His shoes were polished, his nails were clean, his hat was well brushed, and a white handkerchief adorned his breast pocket, but his expression was somewhat blank. In fact, it was completely blank, for he had neither eyes, nose, nor mouth. "Hello, little boy," he said, amiably shaking Milo by the hand. "And how's the faithful dog?" Go ahead and add to your appearance box. Now remember, we talked about the wordplay. His name is an example of wordplay. What's he like, and how does his behavior and traits reflect the meaning of the word trivial? Remember, he makes Milo and his friends do tasks that have no purpose. He admits he doesn't do things that are worthwhile or important, and he does things that aren't important, so he doesn't have time for things that are important. So instead of chasing Milo and his friends, he busies himself with counting a pile of pebbles. Be sure to add about the wordplay with his name at the top. Now let's look further. His challenge to Milo. What challenge or obstacle does he present to Milo? Well, he stops Milo and his friends from continuing on their journey until they complete useless tasks for him, like moving a pile of sand with a pair of tweezers. He wastes Milo's time by having him do unimportant things. Add this to the box that says challenge to Milo. Now, in the next box, Milo's use of the gift. How does Milo use one of his gifts to overcome this challenge and help him conquer ignorance? So how did Milo use his gift? Well, he used the magic staff from the Math Magician to figure out how long it would take him to complete the tasks. Milo realized it was going to take him over 800 years to finish the job. So they escaped by running toward the sound of a voice that told them to run. Be sure to add this to the box at the top of chapter 17. Last but not least, conquering ignorance. In the top box, how does Milo's actions and his gift, what can we say how he's changed? Well, because he uses the magic staff, Milo shows he's changed by thinking for himself and solving a problem. He used to not like numbers or see the point of doing math, but the magic staff showed him how helpful math could be. One lesson he learned from using the staff is to think for himself and solve problems, not just spend his time doing worthless tasks because someone tells him to. Or maybe another lesson he learned is that his time is precious and worth more than completing useless tasks. Be sure to complete the chart at the top of the chapter.